important to note that these iChats are held in a non-controversial, non-belligerent, and confrontational manner. We believe that this style enhances amity and collegiality between our guests and students. Our guest for this session is Mr. Johan de Villiers. Yes.
Thank you everyone for allowing me to be here today.
Thank you. He's the General Manager of Royal Fiesta and Boutique and Apartment Services. Am I right?
That's great.
Yes, please. So you're welcome, Mr. Johan. Yes, please. Mr. Johan, just to start with, I want you to briefly introduce yourself.
I'm the General Manager for Fiesta Residences Hotel. We do assist in managing both hotels, the Fiesta Royale, which everybody's very, it's a well-known hotel and a very good hotel in Accra. So Fiesta Royale originated and was started 15, 16 years ago under the Fiesta brand. That's when the Fiesta brand was started by the Wusu family when they bought over the property. And based on the success of the hotel over the next 10 years, they then decided to open up the second hotel, which was Fiesta Residences in Cantonments, with a slightly different design. So where you have the Fiesta Royale, which is a traditional hotel with 100 hotel rooms, the Fiesta Residences is more so they offer more apartments. So it's a slightly different market segment that we aimed at when we created it, and it's proven to be very, very successful. If we look at the occupancy figures of both properties over the last few years. We are currently one of the top performing properties within Ghana, within Accra. In terms of our occupancy, our performances, our guest feedback on average, although obviously that we'll discuss further the COVID and the effects that it was there. So I was fortunate enough to be invited from South Africa as a hotelier to come and manage the property 4 years ago, initially on a 2-year contract, subsequently became a 4-year contract. So hopefully maybe in the next few years I'll apply for my citizenship, we never know. But amazing growth that we are seeing within the hotel industry itself, and amazing product that we have, and we're very, very proud of it, and we hope that it's still going to carry on for many years to come. And who knows, maybe there might be a 3rd or 4th Fiesta on the cards. We'll see, but yeah, there's some good indicators. So as a hotelier, I've been a hotelier for the last 23 years. I originally started, my origins came from the chefing side, so as Chef Isaac. We've got a passion for cooking, that's why I'm not the smallest guy in the world. But eventually I went more into the management of the hotel itself. I found that if you have a passion for cooking, then stay to it. I've got a passion for eating, but not so much cooking. So I let the chefs do that work. They're better at it than I am. But ultimately, I then decided to move into management, and I further did some more studies in the hotel management field, or operations field. And then we started progressively moving into senior management. I then went into specialist field in terms of banqueting and events, major events with a company called Sun International for quite a few years. And then I broke away from Sun International later, but going then absolutely into just events management. Subsequent to that, I returned to the hotel industry, and I was then offered the position to come to Accra, then come and manage the properties over here and see what we could develop as a company within Accra and also West Africa over the next few years. So that is our path where we are going forward, and we'll be sharing some exciting news in the field with you today and discussing this hopefully. So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you very much, Mr. Johan. So I'll just go straight to some questions that I want to ask so that the audience will know.
Yes.
How did you make it through to become the general manager? Because it's a very prestigious firm for that matter.
Thank you. A lot of hard work. 23 years in the making. So if you want to be a general manager, it takes commitment. It's not something that is going to happen within 6 months or a year or 2 years of starting within this industry. It took me 15 years to reach my first general manager position, and it was 15 years of hard work and dedication. But I can guarantee you that the rewards ultimately is definitely worth it. It's one of the most interesting career paths that you can do. For myself, like I said, I started within the food and beverage field, or the kitchen field, worked into the food and beverage field, worked then up to the events management, major events, big concerts. So it's a very big spectrum. Then I went back into the hotels and then further my education within the operating of hotels and the rooms part of it, until it came to such a point where I wanted to expand my personal knowledge further into the African market. And that is also where the growth is within, and we'll touch on that a little bit later, where the growth is in the world currently on most of the hotels is the African market and the African continent. So as a hotelier, it only does make sense that you start exploring within these fields and go to where the market is. So I was fortunate enough when I did make myself available to be selected as the general manager, and obviously go through your probationary periods and that. And I adapted very well because I think the Ghanaian market is so welcoming, and with the drive on education, understanding, and the strong economy, it made it very easy to fit into the market within the management position here in Accra. So I think it was more of a blessing. Sometimes I do believe so, maybe a little bit of luck, but I think a lot of hard work at the end of it.
So you can practically say that the tourism and hospitality industry is a profitable business. And how would you come to this conclusion?
Okay. So I'm going to put it in the answer in a slightly broader scope, so that it's more clear. In Ghana, 6% of the GDP, so your gross domestic product that is generated within the country, is generated by tourism. 6%. So we're not talking about mining, we're not talking about gold or diamonds or anything else. From tourism and the factors within tourism. Tourism, and we can look at the facts and figures a little bit further on down the line, but we're looking at almost 6 billion cedis being generated year on year within the tourism industry. When you have brands, major brands that are now investing into Ghana, recently, I would say recently, you've had the Marriotts of the world that's opening up, you've got the Kempinski's of the world, the Movenpicks, all these big international brands that are looking. Now, understand this, that those brands are not going to open up if it's not profitable. They open up in a market that they know is a developing market, and it's a growing market over the next 10, 15, 20 years. When brands invest in a country, and hotel groups invest in their countries, they take the long-term view. They don't take a short-term view of, we're going to invest $50 million in order to generate $55 million and I've made my money. No. They want their returns tenfold over the next 20 years, 30 years. So, and your most profitable side of any property or any hotel is the rooms. Because your rooms will cost you a lot of money to build. That is true. But your return on that, if you've spent on the average on a new development, you'll probably spend $100,000 in developing a single room, one room. So if you build a hotel with 50 bedrooms, you are probably in for a spend of $50 million. Okay. Now, that is not just saying it's going to cost you $1 million for only one room and all you have is one room. That is the facilities around it, the hallways, the carpets, the restaurants, but we base the calculation on the amount of rooms. So your expected yield or your return on a successfully run property, you can look at between 50 to 80%. Thank you, madam. So between 50 to 80%. So if you've invested 50 million, over the next 10 years, you can expect out of your rooms, if you manage a property, to be looking at a 50 to 80% return. Effectively run restaurants, food and beverage outlets, so that is the, in the cooking field, and that if you have a good restaurant, it's obviously a lot less, but you're still looking at a comfortable 10 to 15%. But then it takes a lot of hard work in order to do so. So by joining the two, by putting your restaurant together with your hotel, the one supplements the other. The one takes care of the other and supports the other at the end of the day. So then you've got two revenue centers, and by adding some more revenue centers to that, so if you add a spa, for example, to your property, so now you've got spa ladies doing what they're doing, massages and doing all the things that we like, and pedicures and manicures. So they also generate, but they pull resources, they pull people from the hotel. So the hotel, once again, is now creating within its own environment a revenue center. So then you add a nice swimming pool to it. So people come from outside, but people were willing to pay for it to come to there. So then you're adding a fourth, public area type of revenue center to that. And for us as hoteliers, and that's where the importance comes in, is to understand how to develop these areas, understand where to develop these areas, and to decide what your target market is and where you want to go. If you're opening up a hotel in the middle of nowhere, you've got no public transport there, you've got your 3-4 hours away from the international airport, logistics is going to play a big factor into your hotel, because your people need to come to that hotel. So you need to look at the logistics side of it, but once all of that is in place, it becomes an extremely profitable organization, but it takes capital in order to start. And when you invest that capital, I think your most important thing in wanting to decide on your profitability, if you're going to open up a property and you're going to open a 3-star property, be a proud 3-star property. If you're going to be a 4-star, be a proud 4-star property. But decide your market segment, decide on your market. If you're going to go into catering and you want to support local catering, so you want to do only local cuisine, then do that at your very best ability and be competitive. If you're going to have a Chinese restaurant, be the best Chinese restaurant. If you're going to be an Italian restaurant, be the best that you can be within that field. But define yourself. When you define yourself and you define your business, you're cutting out a part of the market for yourself in order to go forward. And that's where the real profitability lies, is being your own individual entity, or having your property to be its own individual entity. And that's what we see and what we've created with the Fiesta brand, is we've created, out of a local market, we've created a superb brand, which is very well known. So can we do a quick hands up? How many people knows the Fiesta Hotel? I haven't heard of it. Okay, who hasn't heard of Fiesta? Not one in the room. So the brand speaks for itself at the end of the day. So, and the brand wouldn't have been in business, I doubt, if it wasn't profitable. So I've taken a long course around, sorry for that. But from profitability, yes, it is.
That's very interesting. And it's also interesting to know that the government is generating 6% GDP through the tourism sector. I guess we are all educated today. Maybe a lot of us didn't know this, but today we have learned. And I just want to ask another question, that we have heard that the hospitality industry has the potential of employing a lot of people. So how true is this statement? Okay,
so statistically wise, for every one tourist, so if we are able to bring in one tourist from abroad, we bring them in on invitation, or they see a nice package, or they're part of a diaspora that is returning again, or like a year of return. For every one tourist that we are able to bring into the country, we create 8 jobs directly. 8. So every 1 tourist. So if you're bringing in 1 million tourists into this country in a year, you create 8 million jobs. Fact. Whether it is directly involved within the hotel or part of the supply chain to the hotel. Because you might be a prospective farmer. So from an educational point of view, I know the college is looking at farming. But I'll give you an idea. When you look at job creation, in 2019, our food and beverage spend that we spent on vegetables, only local vegetables, and we have 2 farms growing our veg specifically and sourcing our vegetables, was an expenditure to the hotel of 900,000 cedis just on vegetables in 2018, 2019. On meat, we scalp meat, just pork, beef, lamb, goat, all of the meat products. We spent 4.2 million cedis to the farmers. So when you start looking at your farming, and a lot of those products, 70% of those products are sourced locally, not imported, locally. So the hotels has got the power to assist farming. You can actually go and allocate a farm and ask for a farm, and we've done similar. So we've taken our purchasing power, we've gone to 2 local farmers, very creative guys, and they actually sourced 15 producing farms to be able to supply us with enough vegetables in order to service our restaurants and our food and beverage requirements. So the supply chain in terms of job supply wasn't just within the hotel. So we've now started from the point of origin where it's planted, grown. The transport person that has to bring it to the hotel is now making money out of it. Then we receive the products. We have to produce the products, so it's then cut up, vegetables is processed, tilapia is cooked, all of these things are then produced. And to do that, you need chefs, you need people controlling it, you need a purchasing manager that is going to the market to buy at the right time, at the right place, at the right product. So that's all part of the supply chain to the market, and that's not even including the hotel. But when you're looking at the total chain, so for every 1 tourism, or every 1 tourist, you can effectively create 8 jobs. So it's a very, very effective economy building division, if you want to look at, and very exciting times in where we are at, especially in West Africa, going forward for the next few years. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, very well. Thank you for that. With the pandemic still lingering, what is the hope of graduates making it into the hospitality industry?
If you asked me that a year ago, I think I probably would not have even sat in this room with all these good people. I think all of us would. But look at where we are a year later. There's now vaccines that's rolling out. There's a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. And what is amazing to see in the management of the pandemic itself in Ghana, and the way the government has managed it very, very well, is as a country, we are operating. When I'm saying we, I'm talking about a global tourism level, occupancy level. So the level of what all the hotels in Accra are running at, we're running globally 30% higher than any other country within Africa. That's a big statement. 30 to 40% higher than any other country within Africa because of the way that it's been handled. So we are extremely fortunate in that there are tight controls. There's been very responsive, a very responsive economy, a very responsive population. And yes, the hotel industry was very hard hit. Last year, if I do recall correctly, and by the figures of the tourism or the hotel association, we looked at job losses between 45 to 60,000 people within 2000, from March to December in 2020. So that was the estimated figure around the direct job losses within Ghana. We've had a 40% recovery on those job losses. 40%. Other properties are not, or other countries are definitely not as fortunate because they're not running the occupancies we are. But the hotels are definitely, we are still battling. Don't misunderstand. There's still challenges, very big challenges, because obviously you need to be very effective in your controls and all your management processes, and it's expensive. These things cost a lot of money at the end of the day. But as recovery goes, the recovery is definitely getting a little. Thank you very much. I'll put that over there. Thanks, sir. That's appreciated. Okay, so the recovery is much greater than what it is in other countries, so we can be very happy about that. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Still on the pandemic, what impact did the COVID-19 have on your hotel and the strategies that you used to recover?
Can I say it's a corporate secret and don't say anything? But no, I think because nobody knew how to handle the pandemic. There's no book. You can Google it, how do I manage a hotel during a pandemic? The last pandemic was in, what was it, 1909 or 1918? I don't even know, people are that old anymore. So there was no point of referral that you could point back to. But what we saw is we saw our revenue dry up. We saw borders being closed, we saw restaurants being closed, people stopped coming. You're not getting people walking into the restaurant anymore, people are not phoning the hotel, people are phoning the hotel to cancel their bookings because they have restrictions on flying, and they've got restrictions on this and restrictions on that. So your first big thing that you do is panic. I think everybody panicked, and that's the worst thing that you could probably do. Is we sat as a management team, as an exco team, and we said, well, we have 2 properties. Let's centralize. Let's centralize whatever the guests are that we have within the one property. We'll move them over to one property, and then cut all of the expenses within the second. So we made the choice to close Fiesta Royal for a very short time. I would never forget that discussion, going to my directors and saying that we recommend that we close the hotel. I thought he was going to throw me out of his office and tell me I'm a bad man, which goes against all logic to do so, because to reopen a hotel is extremely expensive. But it was the right choice at the time for us to centralize, and that's what we did. We centralized all of our costs, we centralized our manpower, and the exco came together and we sat around the table, very socially distant at that point. I think we were sitting in the restaurant with people as far as right at the end. We were screaming at each other because we didn't know what's going on with this COVID thing and how effective it is and what's going to happen. And we came up with our strategy that we are still today, we are applying as Fiesta as the brand. We came up with the handling tactics, the cleaning. What do we need to do to clean? Because your cleaning, for example, in rooms is now hospital grade cleaning. It's no longer just your normal cleaning, what you would expect from a hotel. You are now disinfecting every square inch. At the end of the day, we were all running around in hazmats, suits. We bought all the staff these white suits, running around. It was a very, very trying time, but what our saving grace is to sit back and say, let's not panic, let's strategize and take it a quarter at a time. Let's see, what revenue can we generate, what other markets, and that was amazing, is to see when people are out of their comfort zone, to see the creativity that comes out. So yes, we started, and a lot of people said, okay, well, can only do takeaways. So we said, if we're going to do takeaways, be the best at that. And that's what we focused on. If we're going to market that, be the best at that. And if we're going to be a hotel that is going to take, because back in those days, and we say back in those days, a year ago, the only business going was quarantine business, be the best at that. And that's what our focus was. We just took one step at a time to focus and work through a quarter at a time. Because at that point we didn't know what was going to happen 6 months or a year down the line, where the economy is going, where this virus is going, what's it going to do to other companies, to supply chains, to everything. Because our market segment changed overnight. So where Fiesta Royale, our one property, is focused, has got a very big local market, government dependent, function dependent, weddings, all these functions that we do there, the restaurant that's legendary, where the residence has got an international market. So we lost both. So where do you go? So now you need to rebuild one market at a time. So we said, well, what are we allowed to do? So we followed very strictly within the protocols given. And we said, then let's be the best at that and take a quarter at a time. So let's start inviting people back into the restaurant when we were allowed to start doing so. And we did that at our very best. And we still do, and we still apply the strictness as what we did back then. Because it's not gone yet, it's still with us. Although there's a lot more movement in the economy now, with the injections and with the jabs that's happening at the moment, it has helped. It has helped to ease things. A lot of people are taking all the natural. We've now learned how to combat it. We've learned how to deal with this thing now, and that knowledge has given us power to take back the economy, to take back the market segment, and to start opening up. And then once we saw that the international market is reopened because of the world-class establishments that were raised and started at the airport, and if you traveled recently, you would absolutely agree with me there, is that the controls at the airport to do the scanning process and the testing processes are like none other in the world. Honestly, it is amazing. Of what when you go to other developed countries, we go to Italy, to Spain, to all these other countries, they cannot hold flag next to what we've done with Ghana at KIA. And that has helped. That has helped. It has put back the security in the country for people to come back to the country to trade, to do business, to further develop, to push yourself into the market and create your own market and be the best 4-star you can be and create that market, and they will come back at the end of the day, because there's a need for it. There's a need for people to come back to trade, to get back into the economy at the end of the day. So yes, it might be stricter, but there's still it's still good. It's coming back now, and that is the exciting thing that we are seeing at the end of the day at the moment. So yeah, I'll look at everything.
It's good to know this, and the hospitality industry is the fastest growing industry. But how come our government is not looking properly into it?
I cannot speak for the government. But no, there are definitely a lot of plans in place. But the development within the tourism industry is going to be led by the private sector. The government can put in the guidance. The government's job is to put in infrastructure and create infrastructure and the opportunity for investment. Private sector needs to come now and say, I'm here to invest. I will build the hotel, we will manage the hotel, but as long as your infrastructure and the space to do it and the economy to do it, and that the government has done. When you're looking at the GDP of Ghana, one of the very few countries had a positive GDP during COVID. Year before, 2018, 2019, exceeded budget, I think by 2 or 3%. Your GDP was budgeted at 6.5, I think 6%, and achievement was 8.5. That is amazing. And the stability that you have in the country is what brings investors. So the government's doing what they should be doing. It's now the private sector that has to get together with your landowners, with your privateers and your developers within the country and sit together and say, right, where do we develop, what do we develop? And there's already a blueprint for that has been created at government level. And that's the reason, we can now categorically state that you will see another 1,000 keys, when we refer to keys, it's per hotel room, 1,000 keys in multiple hotels or properties will open in the next 2 years within the Accra, Ghana space. Within that, between Tema and Accra, that's 1,000 keys. 3 years ago, they added 1,500 keys when the other two, the Motex and these hotel came online. So we're looking at another 1,000 keys. So my projection, probably over the next 10 years, is going to be within the vicinity of 5,000 to 8,000, if not 10,000 keys within the Accra market that will put Accra in the convention space market, where you can host conventions of 10, 15, 20,000 people. And that is where the market is going, and the hotel market is going, and the developments are going. So yeah, the government, I think, is doing well. I think is doing well.
Thank you. Okay, now we'll move on to what you do, the hotel, the boutique hotel, and the service apartment. So what is the difference between these two, the boutique and the service apartment? Are they the same?
Okay, boutique hotel is defined as probably anything under 85 keys, traditionally. So, but service apartments is just a different concept. So, when you look at the traditional aspect of a hotel, a person builds a hotel, which is a hotel room. Inside your hotel room, you have a bed, you've got a wardrobe, you've got a TV, maybe a small desk that you can work on, functional bath and shower, a little kettle, and that's it. That's a hotel room. Okay, so when you're looking at functional space or serviced apartments, you've now taken that space, doubled it or tripled it, and you've now created a home away from home. So, a lack of a better expression, probably like a penthouse. So, if you imagine we have got 30 penthouses on our property that we rent out. So, when you're a business analyst person, expatriate that is coming to a different country that you have to now stay in because of work commitments for 3 months, 6 months to a year, I can guarantee you, after a month of eating the same menu in the same hotel, you're going to get very tired very quickly of hotel food. Because it's always the same, it's bacon and eggs or sausage or whatever the case may be. But in having a serviced apartment, it gives you that ability to cook for yourself at the end of the day, to be more home. So what we're creating is a home away from home, and the abilities to do so. So yes, there's still a nice restaurant if you want to pop down for a good steak or whatever the case may be. But if you feel you don't want to spend the money, if you feel you want to be a little bit more in isolation, then you've got your apartment where you can now fend for yourself at the end of the day. And that's been one of our biggest success stories in that. And what we've seen the trends in hotels is that newer hotels that are developing now are developing a combination of both. They're not just doing traditional 100 bedrooms, they're now going 60 bedrooms, 40 bedrooms, and 40 residences or serviced apartments. So, which gives you, they've changed the recipe. Now, the Fiesta brand brought in the new recipe 6 years ago when we opened up Fiesta Residences. It was the first hotel that opened up with the residence concept. Now we're seeing residences pop up everywhere, but it's not serviced at the end of the day. But well, that's a whole different discussion, and I'm saying tongue-in-cheek because I'm getting myself in trouble here. But the concept is slightly different, but it creates a home away from home, and that's been to our advantage, especially during COVID time, because if you're a traveler and you're going out to business meetings, meeting other people, going out all the time, and a restaurant, a busy restaurant, is still a point of exposure at the end of the day. So if I give you the facility or the ability to sit in your private space and isolating your space versus sitting in your room or having to come down to the restaurant, people appreciate that fact. And that's given us our success in what we have at the moment, and that's what our basis of our business is based on. So the management, yes, still managed same as hotels, so you can still get your wake-up call at 5 o'clock in the morning, you can still order bed and breakfast, we deliver it to your room. The services are exactly the same, but the concept behind it is completely opposite.
And looking at the service apartments, and I guess rent for a long-term stay, and what is the maximum duration?
Oh, okay, that is the core of our business, is long stays.
That guarantees you the money.
That guarantees you, well, the best price if you're taking an apartment for a long time. we've had an Italian gentleman, the longest stay that to my knowledge that we've had was 4.5 years.
Wow.
So when the gentleman was so happy, he actually asked us to remove all of our furniture, brought his furniture from Italy, and moved into the apartment until 4.5 years later, until his contract was finished, and then moved out again.
Wow.
So we have an average stay, when we look at between the apartments and the hotel, our average stay is between 9 to 20 days. So we always deal with long stays. Okay, so our longest stay, and what most people will do is they'll take it for a month or 2 months, depending on the contractability, or if it is a person that is waiting that's doing renovations in their house, but the renovations run behind, they'll book the apartment for a month or two, and the pricing is set up so that the longer you take the apartment, the more, the better the prices gets for you as well, because it's a long stay at the end of the day. So yes, it's something that does work quite well.
Talking about the pricing, I know a lot of us they have families. So which one is more affordable for a family package?
That would definitely be the longest stay. The longest stay within the apartments. That would definitely be.
Okay. And moving on to another question. Are the service offered all the same, like the boutique and the service? Are they the same services?
Absolutely.
They are the same.
It's vital that they are the same. So you can expect within the boutique scenario your standard service. So housekeeper will come to your room every day. They'll make your bed. There's a turn down in the afternoon. There's room service when you need it 24/7. The exact same is applied to the apartment. So it might be an apartment. The only difference is that it's got 2 bedrooms and it's a bigger kitchen and a very nice lounge and a big TV. So the concept is exactly the same from our side, from a management point of view. The services are the same. So you still have your housekeeper that will go there every morning, afternoon they'll do turn down services. So the service itself is exactly the same.
A lot of questions really in the minds of the audience. So I'll open the floor so that they can ask questions before we move on.
Okay, absolutely.
Yes. So please at this point, any questions?
I want to know the difference between a 5-star hotel, a 4-star hotel, and the others.
Okay.
And then my second question is that the hotel is a profit-making entity, right? So why are your things expensive?
Why are things so expensive? To answer the first one, the difference between 5, 4, and 3-star. Traditionally, in the history of hotels, you've always had the involvement of like a grading council or a standards bureau, which will determine on paper that what's the category of your hotel. When they come to your hotel, so for example, if you want to be a 5-star property, and I'll use some examples from our local criteria, you have to have a tennis court on your property. You have to have a doctor or medical facility on site in your property. So, for example, Fiesta residents, we don't have space to put a tennis court, so I can't qualify to be a 5-star. So I have to operate within the 4-star level, but I can tick the boxes of the rest. So your difference really is in input, okay? So if I have a 5-star property, the chair that I have next to me and what I'm going to put into it is going to be the difference between a very luxurious chair and a comfortable chair at the end of the day. If you want to have a private spa session at 2 o'clock in the morning coming back from the nightclub, in a 5-star environment, I'll have somebody that can do it. In a 4-star environment, you might have to wait for office hours, and 3-star might not be offered at the end of the day. So it's the level of offerings that differentiates between the different stars. But that's not a bad thing, because that forces the categories between the hotel. That's why in my previous statement that I said, if you're going to be a 3-star, be a proud 3-star, because you've got 3-star bracket is normally your general traveler, business traveler, person that is on the road all the time, that frequents a lot of hotels throughout his year of travels. is going to rather look at a good business 3-star because of the affordability and the functionality. There's no frills and no special things. He just wants a bed to sleep in, good internet connection, a good meal at the end of the day, twice a day, and reliable transport back to the airport. That's a good 3-star. When you go to the 4-star, it's going to be more comfortable beds. Not that the bed should be uncomfortable, but maybe bigger bedrooms, nicer linen. You add some bells and whistles and frills to it. And when you get to the 5-star, you get hotels in Dubai that declare themselves as a 7-star. When you go to that toilet, that's 18 karat gold. So that's the difference. So it just categorizes everybody, and then within the categories, that is where you price mark yourself as well. So your price expectancy is where people will guide you and rate you. So if they rate you as a 3-star and you rate yourself as a 3-star, they're not going to be paying $500 to stay with you on a night. If you're rating yourself as a 5-star top, you might get a chance to rate yourself at $500 a night, and people are willing to pay for that. So it helps to categorize the expenditure within the different groups. But that's why when you are creating your space or your grading, whatever the case may be, do that proud and be what you want to be within that segment and claim that segment. There's nothing wrong with being a 3-star. There's nothing wrong with being a 2-star. There's nothing wrong with not following grading. If you don't want to be graded, look at Hilton across the globe. They refuse to apply. You cannot. No Hilton hotel in the world has been graded before. So and neither will they, because they don't believe in the grading system. So it's a very traditional way, if that answers your question on that one. So the second question was relating to prices. Ultimately, hotels is still responsible to pay their dues. If you are an investor into a hotel and you've put in 20 or 30 million into a big property, you're doing it for a reason. At the end of the day, so there is a yield that has to be done. There is a return or reasonable expectation of the director or the owner of the property to be making profits back. And so the pricing pricing is effectively where you're going to be making your money back. But that depends on the market. Once again, to see where you're going to position yourself within the market, what you can charge. And interesting enough, if you look at what's happening in the market currently, in the Ghanaian market, or in the Accra market, most hotels are about 40% under their rates that they were charging in 2019. So you can now go to these other hotels, although advertised at a higher rate. When you walk into the front door and you offer them $140 or $100, they'll sell you a room instead of $300 because they want your business at the end of the day. So that's given us a bit of a kick in the teeth, if you want to call it that, and a reality call, but it still affects the profitability of the business. But yes, it is an expensive business, but also understand that a lot of the manufacturing and things that happen within hotels in the Accra, Ghana space, a lot of items are imported because there's very little fabrication happening currently. So the fabrication economy still has to grow, the local development economy has to grow. So everything is imported. So, and we know once you bring in something in, there's a tax that has to be paid on top of that. So you're looking at a cost, and I'll use wine for example. So if you bring in a wine, because if you don't have wine that is made, red wine, you've got obviously palm wine. But when you're looking at a variety of wines, there's, I think it's a 99 or 97% importation tax. So if that wine bottle costs you $1, $2 before tax, and you haven't put your markup on it. So you're selling it for $3, but the actual value is only $1. So that is unfortunate that we are hoping for in the future we might see a bit of a reduction in imports or local manufacturing that will take the place of that. Does it answer your question? And I'm going to use pork, for example. Did I hit it on the head?
Yes, we're interested.
So when we look at the supply chain, is that you will have a supplier that will come and present to you a superb quality pork chop or pork rib or whatever cut or lamb, and by the third delivery, the quality has deteriorated. Because maybe I come out of a farming background, so I understand pigs a little bit and farms, and so maybe all the good pigs have been slaughtered and you're only left with the old ones. So, it's too much fat, not enough meat, and that affects the restaurant because the chef will not put out that product and cook it and in all fairness want to present that to his client on his approval. So our biggest challenge is the consistent supply. So if you go to look at a supply chain, regardless of the product, I mean, you can do soaps to the hotel rooms. That is your amenities to the hotels is one of the biggest money-generating supply sectors that there are. So your soaps, the shampoos, the little bottles that we always see that's inside the hotel. Now, if you consider, if anybody has stayed in the hotel, the first thing everybody does is those little soaps go home. Because I do it as well. I take it, or I take it from me on the plane, or I use it at home, because it's always handy to have those little soaps. But now if you take it, if you've got a hotel of 100 rooms and you're running at 100% occupancy, checking in out every day, over 10 days, that's 10,000 soaps. That has to be replaced at 1 CD per soap. That's 10,000 CDs just on soap. But if you can supply 10,000 CDs at 50 CDs or 50 pesos, consistently, the hotels will gladly look at that. And in fact, that is one of the driving missions within the economy is for hotels to turn from importing to purchasing locally. Because that's your drive. You have to support the local economy. You have to build your economy. So we've shifted, for example, when we look at residents, when we open it up, we had a 70% importation sector. We've reduced that down to 15%. Of quite only essentials that we cannot find, but everything else we are able to find. But consistency is the big issue. Consistency and quality. So if you do present a product that you're able to consistently deliver, because that's where the breakup or the problem comes in, is that we find a supplier enthusiastic, has an amazing product, we're all happy with the product, quality is superb, but the consistency is not there. So look at the supply chain in terms of your development. Make sure there's no bottlenecks. Make sure the communication on placing orders is 100% clear. Your systems are in place. Then you present your product. Because by having systems that fail, you're not doing any justice to your product at the end of the day.
Thank you very much. I'm told this is about the second time this program is organized this semester. For this semester. And this tells me Ralph Fiesta loves this institution. Well, we have various programs over here. And education, business, and others. What are the prospects? Once you have us, and you also have we complete school year, and we want to work with you. Somebody's reading education management, somebody's reading business. How do we fit into Fiesta since we need job?
We actually had the very same discussion not an hour ago. Look, Fiesta as the brand is all about education and growing the brand itself. And remember, your students and education is where the leaders and the managers from tomorrow come from. Because we need a source pool, and the better we can identify the source pool and we can assist in the source pool in creating the right managers for the future, the better for our own future and for the company's future and the growth. And that spreads amongst various fields, which and that is what we are seeing, and we had an earlier discussion about this. There's much growth in the hotel industry. We are seeing that. We're seeing a lot of developments within the industry. What we are not seeing is education keeping up with it. and training, keeping up with it. There's a lot of development and talk, and now it's exciting to see that the college is now gearing up and saying and taking on different segments of that to that. But there needs to be a better collaboration, exactly what you are saying, between the private sector and education. So to bring the two together, to have a very clear path in order to follow, so that we can create paths for the future students, create paths for the entrepreneurs in order to feed into the industry, not just necessarily with Fiesta as a brand, but for an industry itself. So yes, there's a big drive for this. As much as the drive there is to develop new hotels, we cannot develop hotels, we cannot build hotels within this property, within this spectrum, without education. That is the be all and end all of the success is the quality of education that is presented. And that has to be done, and that's done in fields like this, in unpacking it in focuses like this, where we're saying this is what we need, so we can now all together sit. We're sitting with hotels like Fiesta, and you're sitting with educational institutions and saying, right, this is what we need, this is where we can educate, this is where we can help, this is where we can give practical experience, where somebody has to come and work, because our industry is practical. Our industry is on the move. You walk, talk, you're out there, you cook, you work with your hands. It's difficult to read about frying an egg and doing it, and I'm sure chefs would contest to that. Especially for the boys. I mean, I've seen some guys that can burn boiled water. So at the end of the day, yes, there's very much a need for it, sir. And I think in looking at partnership agreements, that is something that is very important. But also having the guidance in order to get people to the level where they are seen as an asset. You want to have it's like marketing. You can always market in the wrong direction. You don't know it. Same thing with education. You need to educate in the right direction and know where you want to go, and that is your path that you're going to follow. So that, I think there's some clarity needed and some further development in that field. Is opening up the various pathways and will open doors for the students of the future in order to get into the door. Does that answer your question?
I have a question.
You have a question?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I'm very much interested in the fact that you made mention that there's always inconsistency when it comes to the supply of products in your organization, hotel. Now, I believe that most of us want to start a business. From the lecture you just given us, we are trying to develop a business idea. And so apart from the normal proposals that we want to submit to a hotel like yours to supply a product to your hotel, what are some of the critical things you want to see in the proposal as a general manager for us to be able to win that kind of contract to do business with you?
Very, very good question. Very good question. And I think the right way to answer that, and from a general manager point of view, and that is having seen, and not just in this country but in other countries as well, is we see a fair amount of disappointment where people, the worst thing you can do is overpromise and underdeliver. Then rather underpromise and overdeliver, and have that concept and apply that concept to your business. But be very clear and understanding that we all speak the same language. Or the contract that we have and what we negotiated is, what is your supply capability? So the discussion, what you want to have, depending on the field with the relevant general manager and what we would like to see, is for you to ask the question, what is your usage levels? Because our usage levels will dictate your ability or your supplies at the end of the day. So then it's the reasonable expectation is then for me to expect, if I'm telling you, okay, I'm using 150 kilograms of A-grade beef fillets per month. Can you supply me, considering to get 150 kilograms of A-grade beef fillet, you're going to go through 50 tons of beef because you're going to have to slaughter 50 cattle in order to get 150 kilograms out of that. And are you able to either just get me the fillet, because I use the fillet, the rump, the sirloin, or I use the pork neck, but I don't use the pork feet? Does it make economical sense for you to be able to supply me with that cut of meat? And are you able to do so by not sacrificing your own business? Then we're talking the same language at the end of the day. So be specific in your questions, understand the market that you are aiming for. So all the chefs, in terms of restaurant, if I refer to food, has got historical statistics. They can tell you, I go through 200 kilograms of potato a week. I'm going through 300 kilograms of lemon a week. Interesting fact is garlic and lemon during the pandemic, we were going through a ton a month.
Wow.
A ton. On tea, everybody's drinking tea, lemon, garlic tea, lemon and ginger tea. We couldn't find enough ginger, but so understand the language that is being said and the quantities, and link that back to your ability to deliver, because the planning in a hotel is on a specific item. So if I have a menu that I've designed, and on the menu I have pork chops, for example, it's not lamb chops, it's not pork neck, it's not pork rump, it's not pork rib, it's pork chops. That's what's on the menu, that's what I have to buy in order to provide to sell to my guests, because that's what I advertise. So I request from my supplier pork chops, good quality A-grade pork chops. And when there's a problem in the delivery of that pork chop without notification, then we're all sitting with a problem, because now the chef has to run around, try and find a different supplier, or have a second supplier that he can try and trust on, which is not great, but that's a very common practice, is that you will have 2 or 3 suppliers and buy between the 3 of them. But from a supply chain point of view, before you develop your supply chain, understand the market, understand what are the products that is needed and mostly used in the market. For example, I think the goat market in Ghana is phenomenal, but there's no big meat goats in this country.
Yeah, too slim.
They're very small. No, they're very small. They're very cute. My wife wants to bring one home the whole time, but at the end of the day, so for me, that is because it's such a high commodity, used commodity. Maybe you should look at importing a different breed that is more muscular, that supplies more meat. Speak to a butcher, speak to a chef, and say, look, this is what I'm looking at, and create your market segment around that, because then you're not only restricted to the hotel industry, you're now committing to the food industry, restaurants, all of these things, by saying this is my market, and then you look at the quantities that you can produce, or that you have to bring in, or that you need to grow home in order to supply that. But first, understand the market. That is the important thing, and what you can do with the other things. Does that answer your question? Super. Yeah.
Okay, Chef.
Chef Mike.
One of the lady asked about why the hotel room is expensive. I think your explanation is right, but I didn't hear about the multiplicity of tax from the government. Especially the multiplicity of tax. There the food and Environmental Protection Agency, the multiple agencies that normally come to the facility for that. And another person also asked about in terms of employment. As a student, we will be very fast with you to tell us exactly what the industry needs. Because if you look at the industry, you realize that the school is sample and the industry is also sample. Because the course content that the school develops is quite different from what we in the industry require. So at the end of the day, it's like we don't need the students. So when they finish school, there's no job for them. Yeah. So I just want to ask a few questions with regard to staff compared to South Africa. You are from there, you have worked with them. In terms of the skills that you normally can work in the facility. and even the qualification that you normally need. And with your explanation or with your introduction, I didn't hear anything about your qualification to that level of the gym.
Okay.
So if you can able to tell us.
Okay. Okay, so my level of qualification, when I first primarily studied, I studied hotel at this first hotel school called the Dalgo Park Hotel Fachschule in a country called Botswana, which is right next to Botswana. So we were subsidized by the Botswana government in order to do our studies. I did first of all my hotel operations diploma, then I went on a sabbatical, I returned and I did my advanced hotel operations diploma after that. So my total study time was probably about 4 to 5 years. Within the hotel operations diploma, I qualified as a sous chef as well. I did my chefing courses. Then later I did several other courses, certificates, operations management, training and development management. I think it's probably about 8 to 9 different courses, short courses, long courses, but ultimately you don't stop studying, you don't stop learning, it will be continuous. I'm now starting to re-look now what I want to start with next year and further myself in that. What we are looking for within the hotel industry is understanding. Understand where what you want to go into and understand the hotel industry, okay? Understand this, that the hotel industry is not for everybody, to be honest, okay? It is not a Monday, Friday, 8-5 job. It's not a job that you're going to be sitting down behind a desk and just, take my 1 hour lunch. It is a job that is people interactive and move, interactive and physical. And it's physically walking and checking and doing and cooking. Next to the mining sector, and I'm talking mining, guys working in mines, being a chef is the second hardest occupancy or occupation that you can do in the world, physically. So if you are planning on becoming a chef, understand it's physical. Understand it's a lot of hard work, but in understanding if that is your passion, then you must do it. And you want to make sure, because as a general manager, I can receive 20 CVs a day. I can receive 50 CVs a day. Make sure that when you send your application, you have done something to stand out above the rest. So you need to promote yourself at the end of the day, if you want to call it that. Okay, you need to market yourself to me or to the other general managers or to your HODs. And you do that by gaining experience. And it's a sacrifice. It's a sacrifice to gain experience. When I was finished my education, I was 4 years or 5 years educated, and I was sending out my CV everywhere, and people would respond to me and say, well, overqualified, no experience. I said, what? So give me an opportunity to gain experience. So I can build experience. No, we can't do it because you don't have experience. So how do you get experience if you don't? And that is where practical assessments is key, where you start working 8 weeks here, 6 weeks here, speak to your friends that has got a restaurant, build up that experience. Get your foot into the door. If you want to go into the housekeeping field of the hotel and you feel that is get your foot into that door. Speak to your lecturers, speak to your rector. So they are busy looking, and we were discussing the fact earlier that hotels always looking for students to do practical, and we allow students to do practical in order to get that practical experience, because from us as a hotel, this is the managers and the leaders of the future. So practical work in the hotel or in the industry is vital. It's vital. You must get a foot into the door, and it helps you to get your foot further into the door. When we look at a CV and say, okay, so this person is applying to become a receptionist, for example. So she only has a qualification. That's it. So I know this person is coming to the hotel is going to be a blank canvas, and we're going to have to apply a lot of training. So if you are looking at becoming a receptionist or going to the front office, so start developing, look at small courses you can add on to it. So for example, grooming, very important. If you're doing a grooming course, go do a grooming course through a spa or therapist, beauty therapist, how to apply makeup, how to do my nails, how to do these things, and add it to your CV, because it's important that we understand that when I'm standing in the front of the hotel, I need to be able to do my makeup nicely, you know, what to wear, what not to wear. I can't come in there and look like a train hit me and think that I'm going to be presentable to the guests, because that's what the guests look for, isn't it? When you walk into a hotel, when you're flying in an aeroplane, the first thing you see is these beautiful people, beautiful uniforms, well-groomed. So get yourself in that position to be there. If it means to do another course to add on to it, do so. If you want to become a chef, you know what? My personal experience, when I started in this industry 23 years ago, I was a pot washer. I started scrubbing pots. That's it. Every day. Every day. 8 hours a day, didn't look left, didn't look right. I scrubbed pots. And I scrubbed pots well enough for 6 months until I took a pot to my executive chef and said to him, it can't get cleaner than this. Can I now start cutting vegetables, please? And he allowed me to cut vegetables. But start with getting your foot into the door, and if it means you need to sacrifice a year or two, you're still young, do that sacrifice, but in the long term it's going to reap much more benefit. If there are functions you could do, so for example, if there is church catering that you're part of a church that is doing outreach programs and they need people to cater for that, add that. Let your pastor write a letter of reference. This person was essential to cooking, helping, cleaning, but get them to be specific.
In fact, we need to
that just helps us a little bit better. Stephen, I've got a question of catering here. We're going to have good discussions, you and I now. So, but to get that foot into the door, regardless of the field where, so I think quite rightly so. So except for the education, okay, but get that education because it gets your CV into the door. But that CV is only as good as your attitude, because from there you have to build yourself. Because from there, that's when your real education starts, is the practical aspect of it. But it gives you an opportunity, so make sure you've got the literacy, computer literacy, good reading, writing, speaking, public speaking, speaking to people. English is a second language for me. It's not my mother tongue. But I read a lot of books.
please say that again.
That's it. so no, don't read your phone. Read books. Put the phone down. Go to the library. Read books. Educate yourself. Educate yourself in your pronunciation. Educate yourself in being able to talk to people, because that's what our business is. It's talking to people clearly, understanding. When we're talking and we show them a little bit more, you understand? See, people don't respond to that. They don't respond. So when you're given that opportunity and you're able to sit with that person, be confident. Be confident because you have the experience and you're there to sell yourself. Yeah.
We have a medallion that we give to our students at the end of every 4 years. After they've done the hard work, we give them one of these. You've done a hard work, and what you've done so far in your career and everything, in our opinion, equates a degree from Marshall. We are not adding the papers to it, but you deserve one medallion. So it is a pleasure to make you one of us. With pleasure, I will. Medallion. And we are in the season of medallions. When it is we will do it from the front. I know the Americans do it from the back. But we will do it from the front. So it's a pleasure. From this day, we consider you as one of us. Thank you very, very much. There's the case. And then on top of it, I've authored a few books, and one of them is this one. This is called You Failed, So What? It was, the foreword was done by Dr. Otabel and Otabel. And I did this some 10 or so years ago. It is my pleasure to meet you.
Thank you so much.